What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the One Deeper podcast. This week, I have Dr. Peter Hendrix. Peter has been on the show before, and he was probably one, I think, was the first guest. Can't remember, but he's always been like a real mentor to me, and it's always so much fun talking to him. And he's always so generous with his time. And this episode, we talk about something that he and I both really like and think about a lot: entropy. And if you listen to the episode where it was Journal Club, and we talked about psychological entropy paper, a paper about conceptualizing anxiety from an entropy framework, it might have been kind of esoteric and difficult to follow. But here we sort of talk about more about entropy, more about the statistics, and of course we go on random tangents, but we try to keep it on the topic. And it was a really awesome conversation. Looking forward to many more with Peter, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
Guest that reappeared.
No, actually.
Travis?
I think it was Mariah. It was the second.
Mariah
was the, because like, I think it was Mariah. Anyway, I'm recording it. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I think the first person to appear twice is Mariah. Pretty sure. Because I made a recording with him all about just learning how it happens in the brain.
Awesome. Right. That's really cool.
But welcome back. This is awesome. Thanks for finally managed to get you to sit down here. Hey, give me one of those mints.
You want a mint?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, man.
I mean, this is essential for the viewers, right?
Yeah, for everyone needs to know that we're keeping our breath nice and frosty. Jesus, why is this?
Exactly, that's what I was wondering. Like
so
the design seems to be
God damn it.
Open to optimization.
Whatever, doesn't matter. Okay, so that was a nice little detour of me trying to get a spint out. What did I want to talk to you about? Okay, couple of things. First of all, I want to talk to you about. I want to talk get a lame, not a lame, but like a very reasonable conversation about information theory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because it keeps showing up everywhere. Like over the past 2.5 years now, I've been in the program. It has shown up in some shape or form in at least one class every semester.
What classes has it showed up in?
So first of all, computer vision, huge. Right now in computational linguistics.
Right, that makes sense.
Then into AI 1, AI 2, stats, not really, but like just understanding statistics was helpful. I mean, there was some example, I can't remember, but like somehow it showed up. Even it wasn't like every semester, at least several semesters. So I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting.
It's sort of this overarching thing that keeps coming back.
Yeah. So now, before we go there, I don't know if this is a good question, but can we talk about randomness?
Can we talk about randomness? Yeah, sure.
Like, what is it? What like people seem to have this vague sort of idea of what random is, but there's like you can quantify it in different ways or like very specific ways depending on what you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what is randomness?
What would you say the different options are with it?
Well, for me, when I think of randomness, I think of a probability distribution of outcomes. Or like just so you have, I mean, I think of it, it's like, okay, when I say random, I'm thinking a random, some variable, right, which can take some number of values. Mm-hmm. And every time you look at that variable, it can be a different number. Oh, I was thinking about, so I've been thinking about this all week, right? Trying to think about like what I like want to talk about. Mm-hmm. A random variable at any one observation is not random, right?
That's and this is it's not just at that level. Like let's say we're talking about language. Yeah. Let's say I'm trying to transmit a message to you. For me, it's not random at all. I know what I want to say. It's been generated very deliberately in my brain. However, for you, it's completely random, right?
Yes.
You have no idea which of a number of possible words is going to show up next in my sentences.
Yes. But, okay, cool. So, like, even if a variable, anything can take a random bunch of different values, right? At the point of observation, it's not random anymore, right? Because it's taken a definite value. It's no longer random.
Yes.
Right? That's... So, a thing is random over some sequence of events. Does that kind of make sense?
And in a time-sensitive way, right? Like in the way like you just described. It's random until it's not.
Right. So when you say, let's say you're measuring someone's height, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a randomly distributed, let's say, something, right? Mm-hmm. What you're saying is, if you sample enough people, mm-hmm. right, you will get a different value every single time. Yeah. Right? Okay, let's say we're sampling a population of people and you want to get the height of each mm-hmm. person, right? The height is a random variable. Mm-hmm. And you can take a bunch of different values within some range of things that can happen. Yep. Okay. But does it make sense to say that an individual observation of height is random? It doesn't. It's sort of defined by the distribution, right? Randomness.
There might be parameters in play, right? Like there might be this predefined space in which random events are able to take place.
Right. Yes.
It does not have to be I could. Like actually, I'm thinking about it. Could I come up with an example where something would not be defined by any predefined distribution? And I don't think I could. I suppose distributions are in place that sort of govern the randomness within certain limits, right?
Yeah, that really... I don't know why this thought blew my mind, but when it occurred to me yesterday or 2 days ago, like at the point of observation, nothing is random, right? It's determined. It's been it has happened. Right?
And this is actually, I hope you don't mind me transitioning into entropy right away.
No,
I'm pretty enthusiastic about it.
Go for it, yeah.
So this is exactly the concept of where entropy comes into play, right? Like entropy is the average amount of information you're going to get from the next event. Right. It's not the amount of information in the actual event that you observe.
Wait, what?
So let's say I'm talking to you and at this point I stop and you don't know what the next word's going to be. Yeah. So you have this random distribution of what it could be.
Yes.
There's a couple of words that could follow stop here.
Yes.
If I continue my sentence the way I wanted to, which was stop my sentence, my would be the next word, and that would be giving you a certain amount of information. But that's only after you know it's my. Then you've got a specific amount of information that you got, namely how much my differs from your expectations or how much it meets your expectations.
Right. So does it have to be defined in terms of what you already expect to happen?
No, that would be information. Okay. Entropy would be how much new information on average do you expect once I'm at stop. So you make a distribution over all the possible events, their relative probabilities, and calculate the average amount of information that you're going to get rather than the average amount of information you're going to get. The entropy turns into information once I say my. But before that, it's like this uncertainty, which is, again, governed by certain rules, right?
Okay. This is good. All right. So I stared at this 1 over this log base 2 of probability equation.
Yep.
Maybe for like 2 hours a few weeks ago. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is such an insanely good idea. Like because like it's so simple. I mean, it's so like the graph it's so simple. It's this inverted log curve. It stops at 1. And so the idea is simple. The more surprising something is, the more information it has.
Exactly.
And interestingly, that the amount of information that it can have is unbounded somehow. So because that graph, it's not defined at 0.
No, it's unbounded in sort of a theoretical manner, but in practice, like any situation you would be in life, there's not an unlimited amount of uncertainty, right? There's something in like there are predefined expectations where if I start my sentence and I stop it at some point, then there's a limited set of options. It's not going to be the case that there's an infinite number just because you don't have an infinite number of words. And the same goes in other fields. Like the number of possibilities, generally speaking, is bounded.
Okay. All right. Let's take a step back. Okay. Do you want to just talk about information theory? Like, there are a couple of there's Shannon information.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a couple of different terms. I'm not sure if they're all referring to the same things. Like, there's surprise, like Shannon's definition of surprise.
Yep.
There's Shannon information. There's entropy. I feel like they're all referring to the same thing, but I'm not quite sure.
So surprise and information are the same thing. They're
Okay.
like mathematically defined as equivalent.
Okay.
Entropy, as I said, is the average amount of information or the average amount of surprise you're going to get for an unknown event. So it's sort of, in a conceptual sense, I guess it's similar to a probability distribution where you know that certain events are going to come out, except now you weigh it for how often each event occurs. You take a log such that it can now be expressed in bits, which is really cool.
Yes.
So I'll actually explain that concept.
Okay, cool. I mean, and then was it Stephen Hawking that calculated the amount of space in a black hole?
Exactly.
I was like, holy crap.
That's one of the things you could use it for if you're an insane genius.
Yeah, right? So, like, I don't know why. Like, it seems surreal to me that I get to walk around thinking about these things and not be homeless. But you know what I mean? Like the fact that I'm like, being useful and like making, like earning some money and like still, like I'm a reasonably respectable person.
Luckily for us, there's different levels at which usefulness exists.
Right. So it's like, so I was thinking this complete random tangent, right? I was like, okay, so using information theory, you can quantify everything as information, right?
Yeah.
The entire universe is just information, like light, okay? And I was like, what's up with black holes? Like, it just destroys information, right? Like, but if you think about it, but if the information can't be destroyed, I was like a stupid naive idiot. And I was like thinking, you know what? What if you think, like, let's think about like a Python program, right? That returns some function, some value, okay? Like, what if that's what a black hole is? It's like it's just a return. It's just a return statement. Like our universe is doing a bunch of computation, it's generating a bunch of information, and for some reason it gets sucked out into some other thing, and we have no idea where it's going. Like, imagine if I was a function in Python, and I'm getting much inputs, okay, I'm doing much of stuff, and then like it just goes somewhere. Like it just returns. I have no idea.
Think about it in real life too, right? And I'm again gonna pull it back to language because that's where my expertise is. Where does that information go, right? Like I'm a sender. I'm trying to send you a message by talking to you. You're a receiver. You're trying to reduce uncertainty about what I'm trying to say. You've done that. You've reduced the uncertainty. You've come to a pretty decent representation of what I was trying to convey as a message. And then where does that information go, right? Like once you've processed this, once you've internalized this, like it's stored in some way in your brain in patterns, like you've learned something, right? Like try to connect this to what Dr. Marijn told you too.
Yeah. It's like, but your brain is doing, it's not like not everything you learn gets
exactly. And what happens in that case? Where did that information go, right? Okay.
All right.
You wanted this to be deep.
I know. I'm just thinking about I was just thinking because I want to talk about a bunch of stuff like distributions.
Yep.
Fascinated by distributions, but First of all, what was your PhD thesis about?
My PhD thesis was about language learning. So basically, trying to come up with an interpretable algorithm. Like sort of deliberately steering away from deep learning, which makes it very hard to interpret what's going on in like a cognitive sense. What the aim was sort of, can we make a simple neural model that meets the requirements of what we know about human language processing from cognitive science, from behavioral patterns, from brain patterns, but less directly. Can we do that? And if we do that, how much do we lose in terms of accuracy, and how much do we gain in terms of interpretability?
Mm. So when was Shannon wrote this as his master's thesis, right? What a baller. What a guy.
And in an era where none of this was anywhere near his existing knowledge, right? Right now, it would be relatively easy for someone to come up with this idea because we're surrounded by concepts that are similar in spirit or similar in vein. He came up with this out of basically nowhere, right?
It's like Andre asked me something about why I can't believe they let people like me write theses and maybe get a master's degree how what use is gonna be. And I explained to him, the thing is, most people's that doesn't matter, because once every 100 years there's a guy like Shannon will write a master's thesis, and it will pay for all the theses that you wrote.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Our existence is only there to make sure that people like Shannon have a chance to write a master's thesis. And can
exactly.
Really
The system is set up so that its basic presupposition is that you don't know where the great ideas are going to come from. So you're going to hedge your bets on all the ideas and just count on the fact that something awesome will show up, which
exactly,
and for some reason it's kept showing up. This seems to be working somehow.
And this is the same reason that things like innovative business strategies work well, right? You invest in a ton of startups and you pray that you're going to get a couple of good ones out, and they're going to pay off massively compared to a more conservative strategy where you would have minor improvements.
Okay, what is information?
Yes. So I'm going to start by explaining the idea behind information theory a bit.
Yes.
Talking about uncertainty and then about information. Okay. Because really the better perspective from at least a linguistic sense is to see information as a reduction of uncertainty.
Yes, okay.
So the idea is that I'm talking to you. I'm a sender. I have a message in mind that I want you to understand. Now, your receiver, you're trying to decode the signal I sent you, which is communicated using a common code language that, your representation of English might differ slightly from mine in your brain, you might have different experiences, but there's a shared element. And the problem is this is a noisy channel. You don't know what I'm going to say. You might not pick up everything I'm trying to say perfectly in an acoustic sense. There might be some uncertainty there. But your idea is I want to reduce uncertainty about what Peter's trying to tell me. You have no idea before I start a sentence. So there's a lot of things open. There's some uncertainty reduction already because we're having a conversation. It would be very weird if I all of a sudden said I want ice cream right now. That sounds like an unusual thing to say in a conversation.
That's cool. So one thing I found, just a totally relevant tangent, but so one thing I found was that there is a level at which you can constrain uncertainty to foster some sort of creative output.
Yep.
You need some sort of... So even though the podcast, when I sit down and talk to someone, I have no real plan, right? But having the structure that... Okay, so the fact that I have already told you this is going to be a podcast has put something in a frame.
Exactly.
And I've also told you that I want to talk to you about some certain thing, puts it in another level of constraints. So the uncertainty of what this could happen, what could transpire in our conversation, is constrained by multiple layers of what we expect from each other, right?
Uncertainty reduction is a multimodal process, right? You're not just using language, you're using the setting, you're using the environment, you're using everything you know about the world, basically.
Right, yes.
Try to try to get a sense of what I'm trying to.
Right. So this is what I was thinking about. So this is what. So when I think about people interacting in society, right? Like there's random people. When you're walking on the street, like we are. So most people think that we are actually cooperating with each other, but I sort of think of it as we are cooperating with the roles that we expect other people to play, which simplifies the people down into certain things, right? So like if I had to go to a store, and when I go to a store, if I wanted to, every time I wanted to buy something from the clerk at the counter, if I had to get to know him at a personal level, right? Like know his hopes and dreams and his past and his future to buy a pair of shoes, that would be untenable, right?
That's a really interesting thought, Elijah. I like that. And I like the fact, like, this probably works in the reverse way as well, right? Like, you're behaving in a role to make sure to
absolutely
simplify communication.
Exactly. Right? So like when I go to the shop, I know he's going to play the role of the storekeeper. I'm going to play the role of a customer, and then already we are acting in a frame that limits the behavioral repertoire of each person. And if either of us has some sense, we will play those roles, and then it'll be all right.
Exactly.
Right?
But this is also like this connects in a very interesting way to certain social aspects as well. What happens if you all of a sudden break out of the expectations, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of surprisal, and that's something, for instance, comedians use a lot, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're like, okay, now I'm going to say something that the audience definitely doesn't expect, which has a comedic effect. But you also see that usually the laughs follow the joke like a little bit later, because all of a sudden there's this huge amount of information processing.
Yes, exactly. It's like this dance between you. If it's too unconstrained, it can be anything. That's too much chaos. That's too much. We can't sort of deal with that. But if it's too constrained, we know exactly what's going to happen next, then it's no longer interesting.
Exactly. Like if the listeners of this podcast would know exactly what the rest of the conversation is going to play out like, they would completely tune out. I mean, they might anyway.
Yeah.
Who knows? But
I don't even know if it was listening to this.
Exactly. But a certain level of surprisal or new information is necessary to keep being interested. Yeah. And indeed, like you said, you need to balance this in a way that...
Yeah. So... there's this, so like some people, so sometimes you'll have a conversation with someone who is like, so like you can predict literally what the next word is going to be out of this person's mouth. Not only that, like based on one of his beliefs, you can pretty much guarantee he believes the exact same things everywhere else, right? Those kind of people to me are just like insufferably boring. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like there's no way. But on the other hand, take someone like Andre, right?
I'm not sure Andre is going to like this podcast much. I love you, Andre.
Andre comes up at least once in every podcast because like everyone knows him.
He's like he's a character in this story.
And it's like a great little, like every time I have to think of example, I think of Andre. Like he's very conscious about this, right? So like he and I talk about this all the time, and he's he brings us. He's a very dynamic person. Like on a broad scale, I can predict his behavior. Like generally, I know what's going to happen. But from a
try doing it on a lower level. I know
moment by moment basis, it's kind of hard. It's like this guy could.
And that's exactly what makes him interesting to talk to, right? Like exactly. He loves playing. I don't know if he's doing it deliberately. You know this.
Like in a sense he is, but he's also like coalescing a pattern of behavior that you can say are the traits of a person. He's like, he's like honest, reliable, like those are sort of aggregate long-term descriptions that take into account multiple instances of behavior, right? Although if for example I say, Andre, meet me at this time in front of the restaurant, if like on the way there, he thought of something that he had, like something amazing or something amazing showed up. He'd be like, "Hey man, I want to be there." I'm like, "All right, fair enough." It's like, the thing is, I expect that sort of thing already. So it's like, it's interesting. Like, okay, sorry.
Do you adjust to these expectations, Udesh?
Man,
do you adjust to the uncertainty?
That's the thing. Like, I asked Marian, when I was speaking to him, if it's possible to be addicted to a person, right? And this relates because I was thinking about in terms of intermittent reward, like the random ratio reward schedule, whatever it's called, right? So it's like a slot machine. Yeah. Like you don't know when it's going to reward you. It's not that's the most reinforcing pattern of reward, right?
Yep.
When you have unknown rewards, random rewards. So like some people I dated were like that, right? Like I couldn't get a hold of them in the real sense, meaning that I couldn't predict their behavior to a level that made me feel like I understood what they were about, right? And the big part of understanding a system, like a person, is being able to predict their behavior consistently.
How did you experience that? Like the fact that you were
anxious,
right?
Anxiety.
Yeah,
exactly. Just super anxious all the time. Like,
especially in a relationship, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You want a certain level of predictability.
Whenever my phone went off with the text, my heart would just stop because like I don't know if this is going to be a good it could, and not because the distribution of the range of things that could happen is so wide for these people. It's like it could be awesome, it could be holy shit, something awful happened, or it could be like, hey, what's up?
And then think of the opposite pattern, right? Like you were saying, you need to balance this correctly, because if someone's completely predictable,
exactly,
you're not going to find the relationship interesting or exciting anymore.
So like I asked Andre, I was like, man, so Andre and I walk around the forest all the time. And I'm like, Andre, we've been doing this for about 2 years now. How is it that we always have something to talk about? Like, how is it that we must have walked together, I don't know, hundreds of hours now, right? But every single time we have something to talk about. Like, it's never like we have nothing to talk about. There's always something to talk about. And even if you're not talking, it's like it doesn't feel like there's no pressure for us to talk. Like we can just sit around wondering about stuff together. It's not a big deal. So there's some sort of generative process there. And I've also found that like if you're having a genuine conversation with somebody, and if it's like a genuine person who is if you're actually seeing more than, if you're seeing beyond the role that they've taken in your life, and you're actually getting to know the person, the more you get to know them, the weirder they are. It's like, man, that's so weird. Like,
but also the more interesting.
They're more interesting. Like they're like, but not chaotic. It's not like, it's like, it's interesting. It's weird because like it has to be this carefully curated amount of chaos, right? Because if it's like all over the place, it's so anxiety provoking. And I want to talk about this paper. The paper we read, which is why this episode is interesting. We read a paper called a entropy management model of what the hell was it called? Anxiety, but the entropy management model of anxiety. Right?
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
Right.
Send me that paper.
So it's like so modeling anxiety in terms of the explosion of behavioral possibilities for a given circumstance. So you're in a situation, you have a bunch of affordances that you can do, and because your behavioral possibilities are not adequately constrained, the amount of uncertainty defined as entropy is super high in any situation, which the body perceives as anxiety.
And this is very interesting because for a normal, like non-pathologically anxious person, what you would perceive in normal situations is just like, okay, what's going to happen? Maybe this, maybe a third option. What you see a lot in people with anxiety is that they think through an enormous decision tree or probabilistic tree of options that might happen.
Exactly.
Which might go like 6 levels deep. And that's terrifying, right? Because once you realize the options are there, the overload of information kicks in.
So one thing I learned was that, I'll be honest, the computational linguistics class, the linguistic stuff, I hate it. Like learning about adverbs and like...
That's horrible.
I can't. Dude, shoot me, man.
But you love the information theoretic
So the most interesting part of this lecture, or the entire semester, if this is the only thing I learned in this class, I'll be happy. Mm-hmm. It's like, if you want to let a little uncertainty into your life, right? You have to limit the range of the number of possible things that can happen. Because if you have one thing that's 90% certain, it's going to happen 90% of the time. But you have a billion other things, each of which has a 0.01 probability of happening. There's still... It's way more likely that one of those unlikely things will happen than the likely thing. Because
it depends on the relative probabilities too, right? Like if really the likely thing is going to happen 90% of the time, then yeah.
No. So like maybe.
But I know what you mean. This is the way language is designed, in the sense that for optimal communication and reduction of entropy, it helps to have some very frequent words and then a lot of low frequency words.
Right. Yes.
That's like sort of the optimal distribution, which is called like Zipf's.
Yeah. So what I got from that is that like even if each thing on its own, each event on its own is unlikely, there are
altogether very likely.
Altogether they're very likely, because there are so many of those things that can happen.
Exactly.
Right. So that was like, I was like, holy shit, right? And I was like thinking, is that what I'm doing? Is like, in my effort to not be too certain about my own knowledge of my own world, have I let in my effort to let a little uncertainty in, I've let all of the uncertainty in. And so now I have no certainty about anything, so I can't make any decisions, right? So
and sometimes you have to, right? Like, for instance, in language, you have to let that uncertainty in, otherwise you're just not going to be able to understand a high proportion of messages. But yeah, it creates this, it's like you dive into a pit of endless information.
Yeah, it's like you want to be a little unsure. Because that's useful. But somehow, if you become a little unsure, it goes it just takes over immediately. So it's like okay, no, wait. So you limit everything, even a lot of things, even if one of those things is very unlikely, a lot of unlikely things means it's more likely that an unlikely thing will happen than all the likely things, which is like not a way to live.
No, I'm just thinking you're gonna fall asleep tonight. There's gonna be like a whole bunch of low frequency items under your bed. Those are your monsters.
You can't live like this, right? So I was thinking, even for when I applied to all these master's programs, right? Or when I was applying to those master's programs, I was like, okay, so Tilburg is most likely, right? But when I was starting that process, I'm very tuned now to know where my levels of anxiety are. Because like I've taken so many steps to keep that shit under control. It's like I know when it's getting out of hand. And I've noticed at the start of every semester, I feel super... I'm all over the place. I'm anxious because I don't know what the flow of things are. I don't know what things are expected. Like when things are expected. It takes about 2 weeks for me to like calm back down again. But the whole master's process was like, for the past 3 years, 2.5 years, I knew what's coming next. Then last semester came by, I was like, okay, now what's coming next is like, holy shit.
Yep. This is exactly what I told you. Like at some point you can stop looking for programs because
exactly.
You're going to end up in a situation where making a choice is going to be impossible.
Exactly. So I was like, holy shit, now what am I going to do? Right? But the moment I started putting constraints, on the possible outcomes, things started calming down. And you can say, okay, you have to have those constraints. So in the paper I just mentioned, what they're saying is, when you are because of the nested structure of your existence, like in your culture, in your family, or like your religion, and in your career, in your goals, all these nested structures act as forcing functions to limit the behavioral possibilities that you perceive. So you are constrained, your possibilities goes down, which means not everything is equally likely to happen all the time. Some things are less likely. So you have a nice distribution, which is not perfectly flat, that like says, okay, this is more likely, less likely. And even if you are naively thinking some things that can't happen will happen, or some things that you think will happen won't happen, it doesn't matter. Even if it's just an illusion, it serves to keep your anxiety at a manageable level.
And this is probably one of the things that we're suffering with in modern times, right? Like daily life entropy has gone up tremendously over the past 2-3 decades.
So like it's really blowing my mind to the degree to which I have applied this in my life without even thinking about it, right? So the best example is the Forest app that I use to keep track of everything. Now, an interesting feature about this app, okay, I don't know if this is intentional or not. A feature of this app is you can only run one time at a time. You set a tag of what you're doing and you get a timer, right? And it's adding timer to the thing. Got it. So when that timer is running, in my head, I'm like, I can't do anything else.
Because my app tells me.
Right? So for that time, I'm doing one thing at a time.
Yep.
So for that 90 minutes session or something, whatever it is, my behavioral output possibilities is crushed to one thing. It's like studying computer science or like studying whatever it is.
No, I do the same thing actually. Whenever I'm working on research, I just turn off my email. I turn off everything around me because I can't have all of these things coming in. I need, for certain tasks, you just need a full focus.
So like, and you're talking about it. So in the gym, when I'm in the gym, right? When you're doing, let's say I'm squatting or deadlifting or like or whatever it is, right? Let's say I'm squatting. I'll cut the weight on my back, and I go down. In that moment, I think that is the purest moment of. That is the lowest entropy moment of my day.
And how does that moment make you feel?
Like calm.
Exactly, right?
Super calm.
You need a certain amount of time every day where your entropy is not driving you nuts.
Exactly. Like when I'm in that position, it's like I only have one thing to do: get up.
And those are like the most pleasant activities in life, right? The things where there's just
so calm.
So
calm. Like all I have to do is this. I'm just doing that. Like every rep is just pull, like limiting that perceptual, like limiting the behavioral output possibilities is huge. So like, when I look at how I structure my day and my week, it's like, okay, so a week starts, I say I'm going to spend this amount of time working on productive schoolwork, right? And that already limits the amount of things that can happen, right? And it makes my decision making easier. Someone says, "Hey man, you want to go do this?" No, sorry. Like,
but because you take the element of decision making pretty much out of your week, right? You do this beforehand. You exactly. Put it aside. Okay, this is the plan. I'm going to stick with this, and then all of your work just becomes incredibly productive compared to otherwise.
So think about it, right? Like I bought the same shirt in 10 different colors. So I don't have to think about it anymore.
Oh, you pulled a good old Steve Jobs.
I have the same pair of jeans I have the 3 different colors of the same pair of jeans, right? I eat the same thing every night on the weekdays because it's just like easier. And I didn't think about it, right? I was doing all this stuff. I didn't think about it. I'm like, holy shit. Everything I've done, what I've done is limit the behavioral output possibilities. So everything is just crushing that entropy down as much as possible, right? I was like, holy crap, that makes sense, right? So like I was feeling all anxious and like the reason why this, I guess, is all this stuff works if you're an anxious person is that it limits the possibilities, especially like if you're someone like me who is capable of thinking of all the possibilities, which basically crushes you from doing anything.
Exactly.
Right?
It's you need to somehow channel that capacity into something productive, right?
Exactly.
And the way to do that is indeed to narrow down your choices.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's like it's amazing how perceptive the brain is of that state. You have a built-in like a billion-year-old thing in your brain that's responding to this distribution of things that can happen, can't happen, right? So randomness seems to be like a no, is it random? Randomness seems to be like this fundamental thing that the brain has been adapted against. It's like not against, but like as having to deal with. Because, for example, like I don't know why I looked up randomly when the mechanism for fat storage evolved.
Mm-hmm.
Like the mechanism to be able to store something as energy. Mm-hmm. It evolved like super early on, like many billions of years ago, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, holy shit. So one of the earliest things biology realized was like, oh shit, we don't know when we're gonna get this again, right? So we gotta make sure we store it somehow. That's crazy. That's a crazy thing to come up with. Like randomness seems to be the fun. Like, well, I mean, physicists don't think that, right? Physicists think the universe is basically deterministic. So recently I've been thinking about trying to understand why can't we be omniscient, right? It's mm-hmm. like what are the limitations of physical law that prevents us from knowing everything already? Like, mm-hmm. why do we have to discover things? Isn't that weird?
How would you see the alternative? Like you're born with all the knowledge?
Everything.
You're just born.
You know everything already. Like what? Like why do we have to figure out things about the universe? Why? Like, what is it? What's preventing us from just knowing everything? I don't know. like
there was a linguistic theory actually. Well, still there's quite a few people who adhere to it. I don't. By I don't know. You probably heard of his name, Noam Chomsky.
Yeah, I know.
Who believed exactly that we were born with knowledge and had that knowledge available from birth about how languages work.
Ah, right. Yes, innate grammar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're not the only one who's thinking like, why can't we simply have that knowledge instead of having to build it up through experience?
Yeah, like why do we have to discover things about quarks and like why don't we already know these things? Like, isn't that weird? That seems like a strange bug in the system for me. It's like, why do we have to go through all this trouble and pain and toil to figure stuff out? And part of something that occurred to me was like, I was like, well, maybe knowledge, because like, okay, if you take this computer, mm-hmm. it's made up of atoms and whatever the atoms are made mm-hmm. of, right? They're just a particular arrangement of those atoms.
Exactly.
Right? So, even that, but for it to exist, there has to be some sort of reason for it to exist, mm-hmm. to be in this particular order. And I was like, okay, well, maybe knowledge doesn't just exist out there in the reality of physics. It's just something that is sort of derived for some purpose to do something. Yep. I was like, okay, well, that sucks. right?
Well, it's just physical capacity limitations, right? Like storing all of the world's knowledge in every person's brain would, one, be physically impossible probably, and the other is it would be incredibly redundant because you probably only need like 2% of that knowledge.
I asked ChatGPT, what are the laws of physics that prevent us from being omniscient?
What did it say?
And it basically said that like some physical laws, like quantum mechanical laws, mm-hmm. like the uncertainty principle and the speed limit of light, so information can't get from one place to another place at the same. Like I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting.
And that's the thing too, right? Like information changes all the time, in a sense. Like a language is not a stable system; it's a highly dynamic system. You would still need to update whatever you were born with, and you would have a huge overhead of knowing all of the world's languages, whereas you only need like, well, what's the language in Sri Lanka?
Sinhalese.
Yeah, you need that, and you would need English.
Yeah.
That's about all you need, and you need a very specific subset of English.
Yeah.
namely the English that you need, like in your specific content, in your specific circumstances. There's like a ton of words you never need.
Yeah. Like, so okay. Tell me if this is a good explanation of surprise, or like all the level of information. I think okay. So if I gave you a bucket with balls in it, right, with numbered balls in it, right, and I tell you, okay, the numbers of the balls in this bucket have on average have a mean of 5 and a standard deviation of 1.
Okay.
Right? And I was like, and I give it to you. And you're like, okay, cool. And then you put your hand in there and you pull out a ball, right? And the ball is 10,000. Okay. Now that ball, from what I understand, is really informative. Yes. It's like, okay, this tells me something. Okay, this means the information that I already had that you told me was wrong. Like, if what you told me was, dude, this is, you know what's crazy? This has broken the way I can use my words. Like, what does it mean to say accurate, or like, what does it mean to say truth, right? Okay,
and it's very precise in information theory.
It's super precise.
A lot of people get it wrong, and that completely sort of.
That's why I have this like
leads to a misconstruction.
This stops and starts. Like, okay, wait, no, I can't tell that it's wrong. I can't say it's truth. It's like, I gave you I gave you some prior information, and then you pulled out something very surprising. Something that which provides you with evidence that the prior information was not wrong. How is it like wrong, or like
I don't know. I mean, it depends on whether you assume that the prior information is an absolute law that's correct, in which case it would just be an incredibly unlikely event.
Yes, exactly.
Or you think from statistics from a Bayesian perspective, where the prior might be wrong. And
exactly. So it's like, given what you just observed, what you just observed is extremely unlikely given the prior information that you've been given.
Yeah.
Right? So what do you do in the circumstance? It's like, okay, well, that's basically statistics, right? This
is why, like, fundamentally, this is why people have started looking into Bayesian statistics instead of like the standard frequentist statistics, where it's assumed that whatever you know is prior information.
What's the difference between those two? Like just
the difference at a conceptual level. I'm not going to talk about like the
conceptual level.
Yeah. Is basically that you take evidence into account for adjusting your ideas about what distributions look like.
Okay. I mean, that's also insanely powerful. It's such a simple formulation, but like
I'll tell you for dice. Like a frequentist dice, no matter what happens, no matter what you throw, you're always going to assume that the probability of the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are the same.
Okay.
In Bayesian statistics, you acknowledge that there is a possibility that your dice is not fair, such that there are different probabilities for each number.
So why would you? Obviously, that makes more sense. Why would you use the frequentist one?
Traditionally, because it's the easier way to do stats.
Okay.
There's also some times where you want some like rigorous framework where you assume that something's true, such that you can get a better idea about what changes in other elements of the system would lead to.
Right. So I know the master's program. There's an entire class on Bayesian statistics, Bayesian stuff. I'm very looking forward to that one.
You would find it fascinating.
I'm very much looking forward to that one. I'm super excited about that. Okay. Oh no, we got so this idea of prior. So that's how I explain. That's how I explain surprise to people when they ask me. It's like, if you had a bag of things, and I told you some prior information, and you pulled out a 10,000, it's like, how that is super unlikely. Yep. But if I gave you that, and you kept pulling out 4s and 5s and 6s and 7s and 4s and 5s, you're like, okay, well, what?
Right. I was just thinking, by the way, Udesh, you must have an enormous bowl of balls, because you said the mean was 5 and then you found a 10,000 one.
Exactly.
For the mean to be that low when you have a 10,000.
Yeah. So exactly. No, what I'm illustrating is like the information I gave you, it makes no sense.
Exactly.
Right? It's like given what you just experienced, the prior information that I gave you is
Yep, exactly.
You
specified the distribution, not the sample.
Exactly. It's like what it's like. Okay, if what you told me was remotely accurate, then this wouldn't have happened, right?
Yep.
But if you kept putting your hand out, it's like just like 4s and 5s. I'm like, oh, well, all right, fair enough. Like, but it's not. So I'm trying to link the idea of being informative and being surprising, right? Because getting 4s and 5s in the situation, 3s and 4s
is not very informative.
It's not very informative. It's not very surprising. It's like, okay, that's what I expected to happen, right?
No, exactly.
So is the information content preconditioned on what you already know? Is it, or does it matter? That's what I'm confused about.
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, it is based on the distribution of possible events, right?
Yes.
Like,
all right, and
the information
and the prior limits the
exactly
possible
right.
distribution.
Like if the amount of information in me throwing a 1 on a dice is relatively low, given that I know that all of the dice throws are equally likely. So whether or not something is surprising depends on my prior knowledge about the distribution of properties, right?
Right. Okay.
So if I have a different distribution of something than you, then what might be non-surprising to me could be very surprising to you, given differences in previous experience.
Right. Okay, so that's what I usually say. Is like, okay, so that's surprise. So
That's surprise,
the and that's what is shown in that in that 1 over
Yes,
log base
exactly.
2 graph, right? It's like if like the more unlikely the outcome that you
The bigger the surprise.
that you observe, the more information it contains,
That's it.
because surprise,
Yep.
right? I was like, oh man.
Like if you were
that's
to
a
give an
good idea.
example in this podcast that was about a student, and the student was not Andre,
Yeah.
that would be surprising.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, exactly. It's very unlikely that it's anybody other than him. Okay, cool. I'm glad I have some handle on that idea, because I thought that idea was like it's you know how like some ideas just sort of like catch you and they just don't let you go. It's like, and I was like, man, either
there's actually one concept I would like to talk about briefly, which is what exactly is a bit.
Okay, yes.
Because this is something that
definitely do that.
confuses people sometimes.
It definitely confuses me as well.
So let's play a game.
Okay.
Let's say there's 128 students in your cohort.
Yes.
It's not the exact number, but I needed to be a power of 2 to be able to to be able to have nice round numbers. Let's say there's 128 students.
Yes.
And now I want you to think of one. Like, don't pick Andre this time, but think of someone I know.
Yes. Okay. Fine.
In your cohort.
Yes. Got it.
And now I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'm going to make these questions try to split the group in half, such that each time I can eliminate half the students, so I can reduce my uncertainty by a factor of 2.
Gotcha.
So is the student a male or female?
Female.
Okay, female student. So that eliminates like half the guys.
Yes.
Uncertainty reduced. Have 64 left.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you another question. Is this an international student or a Dutch student?
International student.
32 left.
Okay.
So we're going to reduce it like that. The numbers are obviously not correct, but that's the idea.
Gotcha.
And I can keep doing this until I end up at 1 student.
Yes.
I don't know any more binary like that. I would split the group evenly.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to tell me who you thought of in a moment. But the idea is that in order to be able to pick 1 from 128 students, I'm going to have to ask questions 7 times. First I go to 64, then 32, then 16, then 8, 4, 2, 1. So that's 7 questions for me to get from 128 to 1. Those 7 questions mean that there is 7 bits of information in me finding out which of the students you're referring to out of the 128.
Is it 2 to the...
It's 2 to the power 7.
7,
yeah. So basically, the number of bits is the number of questions that split the group into 2 that I would need to ask to go from the initial set, like the initial uncertainty, to just 1, to just completely reduce an uncertainty. So a bit is basically just the number of binary questions I need to ask to find out the information. That would be the number of bits.
Okay, why binary questions?
In reality, these are not binary questions, right? Like I won't be able to split the group in half, like you just saw. At some point, I don't know how to ask a question anymore. What that means is that the actual number of bits is higher. Once I can't make these binary questions are the optimal way to split, right? Like it reduces the uncertainty in an optimal manner. If I just ask right away, is this I'm trying to think of. Is this Sally? Let's say that was the first question I asked.
Yeah.
Then your answer is probably going to be no, which means I have 127 left. Very bad strategy. So the optimal strategy is to keep splitting it in half.
I see.
If you ever play the game Guess Who, I don't know if you know this.
But like, can't you do better than half?
No.
Oh.
Half is the optimal strategy.
Oh, wow.
When you deviate from that, because you can't ask a question that splits in half, you lose questions. Therefore, you increase the uncertainty. Like, you increase the number of questions you need to ask.
So the best case scenario is that you split the options in half?
Yeah.
But like... All right, yeah, okay.
I mean, sometimes you're going to be better. Once in a while, you win by guessing Sally every time as the first student.
Right.
On average, you're going to need more questions by using that strategy. In fact, like if you always ask one student, you're going to need a whole lot of questions.
So if you have if you have a coin, a fair coin, that's 50-50, right? That is
a really good example because the entropy of that is 1 bit.
1 bit.
How can we know that? Well, if we do if we apply the formula of entropy, which is minus log p times log minus the log of p times the probability.
Yes.
You sum them up. You end up at 1.
Yes. Okay.
So that's a good example of what 1 bit would be. Like flipping a coin, there's 1 bit of information in the outcome.
Okay. Now, if the coin is biased, right? So a fair coin is maximum entropy.
Yes.
Because it could be either one.
Yes.
Heads or tails.
Yes.
A biased coin, let's say that flips heads 60% of the time and tails 40% of the time, is lower entropy.
Exactly. Because you have some prior expectations. Those prior expectations are going to lead you to make more accurate predictions. Namely, you're going to be right 60% of the time. You just always guess the side that's more likely. Therefore, it's lower entropy. Right? Like if I guessed out of students and I didn't tell you not to pick Andre beforehand, it would have been a good choice to base my guesses on that. Yeah.
Right. Oh man, that's interesting. Huh. So like, that's cool. Okay. So let's say the more I know about what outcomes are likely, the less entropy.
Well, the more uneven the probability distribution.
Yes, okay. The more uneven, okay, right.
Yeah, I mean, you could know a lot. You could know that it's a uniform distribution, like you said, like heads and tails being equal. Then it's still maximum entropy.
Right.
But the more they differ, and that's why, for instance, language is designed in a way where there's a few very high frequency options and then many low frequency options. They're not equally likely because otherwise you would end up in an entropy hell.
So just knowing about the distribution is not enough. It's about the distribution itself. Like
exactly. It's about the distribution itself.
What the outcomes are actually possible to be.
And then, of course, it's important that your representation of the probability distribution, your knowledge about it, is accurate, right? Like if I end the sentence again at some random. Now you need to have an expectation about what the next word's going to be.
Yeah.
And the more accurate your representation is, the lower your entropy, right? Like if you're very unsure, you don't have a lot of experience with the way that I build sentences, you're going to be very uncertain about what my next word's going to be.
Right.
The more you know me, the better you're able to estimate the actual probability distribution, which is very non-uniform.
Right. So this is like saying it's not enough. Like knowing that someone is a schizophrenic doesn't help.
But this is what Shannon refers to as the shared code. We need to have a shared code, basically.
Right? It doesn't help because the actual distribution is so nuts.
Exactly.
That it doesn't help knowing that this person is.
Well, I don't know. Like just to nuance this a bit, I don't know if schizophrenic people would necessarily have a less predictable probability distribution, but I get the idea, right? If someone is completely unpredictable, then
exactly. So I mean, I feel like everyone has a certain range of delusions that they like to to entertain, but That's cool.
That would be incredibly tiring, right? Like if you were
exactly.
if you were having, like you said earlier, like if you have a relationship with someone who is very unpredictable a high percentage of the time, that's an incredibly tiring day-to-day life because you're constantly living in the world of
and your
more
brain,
uncertainty.
And your brain likes predicting things. Your brain likes being able to predict things accurately.
And it doesn't like being wrong all the time.
It doesn't like being wrong all the time. It sucks. Because that takes energy. Every time you have to rebuild a neural connection, I feel like that's super energetic, right?
That's what it is, right? It's not just the processing. It's not just trying to recover what I was actually trying to say, taking more time because there's higher entropy. It's also every time you make a wrong prediction, you're going to have to update your beliefs. That takes extra work as well. Like it takes readjustment of your neural connections.
So okay. So let's say you have the reading you've been assigned before a lecture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does it make more sense to go to the lecture without having done the reading, or because let's say. No. I think it helps to go up because then it constrains the possibilities of what the lecturer is actually meaning, right?
It depends what your goal is, right? If your goal is optimal understanding, I would definitely recommend studying beforehand.
Right.
If your goal is staying awake because you need enough surprisal, then
Then you're like, holy shit, what is this guy talking? What is this guy talking about?
Then you could do it the other way around.
Yeah. That's cool. But like, so even if you know your brain, your brain is constantly trying to like homeostatically help you be a better predictor, right?
Yes.
It's like, let's say you know someone is unpredictable, then you just adjust the behavior to know that, okay, I can't predict this person and I can't count on this person to do what they say they're going to do. So then you just, what's the default answer? Just don't expect them to do anything.
And you know where this starts playing a role, Udesh? Like, you might have noticed this already, like, the older you get, the harder it gets to memorize people's names. Why is that?
I don't know.
The reason is you know more people.
Oh.
It just becomes, like, the entropy becomes enormous as you start to, like, for me, it's so incredibly hard to remember students' names because there's like 1,000 of them.
So many of them. Yeah. You met so many of them.
I knew everyone when I was a kid. Like, it was no problem. I knew people's phone numbers by heart.
Exactly.
But try doing that for a group of 1,000 students.
Yeah, that's true. So this comes down to like, so this, I was also thinking about it in terms of making choices now. Like you said, it's hard, right? Like on Netflix. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
It's
it used
impossible.
To be so easy. There's like 3 movies on TV tonight.
Yeah.
Make a choice.
Yeah. So now I'm using this filter where it's like, okay, if this was just on TV and I had no other choice, would I watch it? And the thing is, most of the things on Netflix, they actually pass that test because it's like they're actually all really good. But if you try to compare them to every single other show on there, then they all fail because like so the fear of missing out is basically a state where the reward for any one behavior is underspecified. I feel like.
It is, yeah. And it's almost like the way you describe it, like there's nearly equal rewards for too many options, right?
Yes, exactly.
And then it becomes almost irrelevant which one you pick. And that's something we don't really deal with very well.
Yeah, so I someone told me that there is a shuffle play option on Netflix. For the life of me, I cannot find it. But apparently there is, and I'm going to find it now because like that would be awesome. Because like just play me the thing you think I should. I'm most likely to want to watch. It's problem solved. So like in a sense, so people, there's a lot of worry and like people complain about algorithms and like what they do, but like I think we've come to a point where the options space is so large that it just wouldn't be feasible to navigate without these algorithms. Like YouTube, how the hell do you like? I love my YouTube algorithm. It's like it's a great friend. I've taken
trained it well.
Yeah, I've taken great care to prune it and so it knows what I like, what I want to see, not what I like. I've pruned it to give me things that I should want to like.
I'm afraid I don't have that kind of algorithmic hygiene.
No, like I'm very so like if I want to watch something completely preposterous like top 10 LeBron James plays,
you log out.
I go to I open an incognito tab, then I watch it, right? If it shows me something that is so interesting to me, like on the algorithm, I don't click the link, I look at the name and I open a new tab incognito and I open and look it up there. I don't want you to learn. I don't want you to know who I am right now. I want you to know who I want to be and recommend things that I want that person to see, right? So now it's really good. Like it shows me like 2-minute papers. It shows me like randomly it'll show me lectures from like MIT and like random conferences. I'm like, good algorithm.
But it's interesting, right? Like if you don't do that,
yeah.
It ends up being a reflection of who you are.
Exactly. And I don't like who I am.
Exactly. It's sort of like it's like a mirror that's really non-flattering a lot of times.
Exactly. It's like this is great because let's think about the algorithm, what it's trying to do, right? Let's just take YouTube as an example. It wants to maximize engagement. Like it wants to keep you watching YouTube as much as possible. Okay. And why are they doing that? Because they have advertisements, right? And you want to show people advertisements. Okay. And the better you get at predicting what they want to watch, the better you can target the advertisements, right? And the more effective it is, right? Okay. Now, there's a step you can take that's better than prediction. It's like you change the way that person thinks so that your prediction gets better, right? So first step is trying to understand the person and predict better. Next step is to actively change what the person wants, which in turn makes your prediction almost 100% perfect. Right?
This is amazing, Udesh. I love this. And the reason I love this is one of the fundamental issues in human communication is how do we arrive at a shared code, one that we can both understand. Yeah. And what you're saying is the first step is for the algorithm to learn your code, right? It's learning, but it's now sending back to you, right? Such that you start sharing the algorithm's code.
Exactly. Yes.
It's starting to impose its way of thinking on your perception of the world and your beliefs. It's influencing your code.
Yep.
And it's driven by how, like, it's a mutual process, right? Like the way in which it adapts your code is how it adapted its code to you. But nonetheless, you are starting to you notice it very strongly, right? Like once YouTube starts suggesting you certain videos, your thought about the world change, your ideas about what you want to see next change.
It's like, so now I'm realizing it's like, okay, what you want, because if you do that, it tries to make, it optimizes for the person you are right now, right? Yes. And that's not always the thing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to optimize for the person that I actually, I'm going to make an aspirational algorithm, right? That's like, shows me stuff that I should want to watch.
And you're doing this explicitly, right?
Yeah,
Which
is exactly
incredible. No one does this.
Yeah, it's super hard.
You're slightly weird for it. But
it's super weird.
Ideally, this would be the optimal algorithm design, right? To make it make you move in a direction that you feel is desirable.
Like for me, like I actually like the ads it shows me. I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. I might actually want that because like they actually make sense because like they're like sometimes it'll be like VPNs, a lot of VPN stuff, like tech stuff, like better productivity stuff, better like health stuff, like all kinds of stuff. I'm like, that's pretty neat. I'm not mad at that. It's not like chips and Coke and stuff. It's fine, right? So like stuff that I actually want to be informed about, which is cool. It's not perfect, obviously, but because the only thing is like because of the research that I'm doing, a lot of Dora, right? So like my thesis, a lot of videos about Dora, which is fine.
But it's like you're having a conversation with the algorithm,
right?
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like if you're talking to Andre, it's very nice, it's very informative. It's never perfect because
exactly.
Well, you're calibrating the code, you're fine-tuning it to arrive at a shared code, but it will never be exactly the same.
Exactly, but like so Netflix has a much smaller repertoire of things that it can offer, right? So It's not amazing. It's more of just like a collaborative filtering situation going on there, which is nice. Like I don't mind that, but it doesn't have the power that YouTube has, because YouTube has such a large repertoire to choose from that you can really make an individualized, like, nice algorithm.
And there too, it's like this balancing again, right? Like you don't want to watch exactly the same thing you watched before, because I would have zero information.
Yeah,
you don't want to watch something that's too different.
Yeah,
that would be too much information and probably something you're not.
Yeah, I don't know why there's no option on Netflix to say I've seen this before. Like I've watched this. Like take it off.
It's like an entropy slider.
Yeah. Like this is like low entropy. Like too low. Like go with the next one. Go with the next one. But there's like they just show you like what the most thing you might like to watch the first, and I'm like, I've seen all of these before, man. Come on.
It would be really that's probably the next step in these kind of designs, right? Yeah. Like get a feeling of how much you want new suggestions to be different from what you've already seen.
Yeah, exactly. And like wow, what was I about to say? It's like slipped my mind. But anyway, recommendations.
And I feel it's doing this gradually, right? Like the first recommendations are things that are very similar. It gradually moves away from that to something that's way too dissimilar, where I'm starting to wonder, like, how do you arrive at this suggestion based?
Like Spotify and Apple Music does a better job, because again, they have a much bigger repertoire of things to choose from. Like I don't have to think about it. Like I just pick the mood I'm in and I pick the thing, and it is always like phenomenal. I'm like this is exactly what I want here right now. This is great. Like I'm like, holy shit, this is so good. You know what I mean? Last thing I want to do is sit around looking on, like, trying to understand these things, right? So like,
but it's the problem set, right? Like on YouTube, I find my music suggestions are also fairly decent.
Yeah. Like sometimes I like more often than not, I find myself saying, "Damn, Spotify, you really knocked this out of the park today." Like you know, these are recommendations that are legit. So like it's really interesting. Like so I was thinking, I was talking when I was speaking to Chris. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about, like, okay, so these algorithms are trained in vacuums, right? Mm-hmm. So like there's a YouTube algorithm trained on YouTube. There's a Twitter algorithm trained on Twitter. There's a Instagram algorithm on Instagram. So we evolved in an environment with other human beings who are, whether they like it or not, are dampened by the network around them, right? So like I think of my network as dampeners, or like weighting functions. Basically, I think of people. I think of people around me like a Gaussian filter. Yeah. Right. So I'm the center of this. I'm the center pixel, and I'm just getting Gaussian blurred by everyone around me. Right.
No, it makes a lot of sense actually.
Yeah. So like humans. When was the last time you met a human being that's never met another human being in their life before? That's never happens, right? It's impossible. Like where it's like unless something horrific, unless something truly horrific has happened to this person, or you're in a cult, or you're a Scientologist. That's the whole. Holy shit! Well, that's the whole thing. Like I was listening to a podcast about it, and I was like, what the actual fuck? Anyway.
But it's interesting, right? Because you're mentioning cults, which are experienced to us as very, very different people, right?
Yes.
But if you look at the overall picture, they're still very, very similar to us in many, many ways. They show, we notice the differences, but if you look at it like compared to apes,
yes,
they're a lot more similar to us, right? Oh yeah,
for sure, yes.
There's certain things that are still very similar there, which tells us something about how we need to, even though we experience them very different, like as humans, we need to have some sort of shared ideas about the world. And interestingly, there is some evidence, right, that the code we develop is one that makes us as a species advance. So there's some underlying principles that derive where the code can go and cannot go, in the sense that it needs to allow us to function as a society as a whole.
Yes.
And the difference in cults are obviously usually not beneficial to how people function in the society as a whole, but they're still a lot more similar to us than we would like to acknowledge.
So why I brought this up is because, like, okay, so unless you're in a cult or you're like some horrific you're stuck in a well somewhere, right? You have other humans who are dampening your behavioral repertoire by culture, religion, whatever it is. Like they're modulating it, right? But now we're in this weird place where there are these other agents who are built in a complete vacuum that have no idea about each other, right? So when Microsoft released Tay on Twitter, there's the Twitter algorithm, and then built on Twitter. And there's Tay, this AI language thing built on complete language, like by itself in some silo somewhere. Then you put them together in the space, and then all hell broke loose, and like it became immediately the most racist, awful thing in the world. I was like, yeah, okay, fair enough, right? Because like the interaction is a very novel interaction. Okay, so I was thinking, so we've never been in a situation before where we are now interacting with agents who have not been dampened by any of the other agents around it, and they're just like
they've not been dampened by agents of the same nature.
Yes,
right. The algorithms are not affected by each other, but they're affected by interactions with humans. Right.
Yeah,
the way they're just learning systems that pick up.
I'm just thinking about the environment in like because I'm just thinking about me in the environment, and now there's the agents that I'm used to having in my environment, plus what I'm perceiving as these new kinds of agents that aren't exactly changing the way they behave in response to the other agents that I'm interacting with. Do you get what I mean? It's like this. It's like okay. So you have this Twitter algorithm, right? That shows you tweets. It's part of. So now when I'm interacting with Twitter, I'm interacting with this agent. I know that this is like terrible, whatever, but like, this is how I think about it, right? Yeah. I'm interacting with this agent. Okay.
No, I think that's not terrible in any way. I think that's very accurate.
Okay.
But yeah, continue.
And there are people like, so you, me, my friends, people around me, right? Okay, I'm interacting. So I have interactions with them, which means like I have links going on from me to them that sends information back and forth. I have a link going on from me to Twitter that's back and forth, and the people that I'm linked to in my net in the physical world are also linked to other people. Right? Okay. Yeah. So, but the link I have to Twitter, it's not, and the Twitter algorithm and the YouTube algorithm and the Netflix algorithm and the Spotify algorithm, I perceive them as being in a vacuum where like they are not communicating with each other at all or other people. Am I wrong?
Are they not communicating with other people?
I guess they are.
They're probably fine-tuned in the way that, in a way, they're almost like people with an incredibly large network.
That's
right?
true, yeah.
And what that means is,
I guess this is
they don't have the same network you have, right? Your network is a very small subset of their network.
Yeah, that's true. I guess this is what kind of Google wants when they want you to sign into everything with Google, because like they have more and more context, and you have more and more connections to everything that you're doing. No, I was just thinking about like, okay, is there something there? Like, is there something about the fact that we have these agents that have been developed in a very different way to how we've been developed, and then I guess we don't interact with them in the wild, right?
But it really, that's in many ways they're very different from us, right?
Yeah.
Like their experiences are different. They're limited to specific modalities.
Yeah.
But the fundamental mechanisms by which they learn, which like if they operate on the basis of artificial neural networks, those share at least some similarities with the way in which we learn about the world around us, right? Their learning mechanisms may be very different in some ways, but may be very similar in others. In the sense that the better they learn in the way that we humans learn about the environment around us, the more shared the code's going to be, the better their recommendations are going to be.
Right. So like what I was thinking was like the objective functions are very limited, right? Like Twitter has one objective function. Yep. YouTube has one objective function, right? Which I guess are embedded in the objective functions of like the business of like of the, whatever it is. But if you put them in a situation I guess they're not in a situation. I'm thinking about something like the paperclip optimizer, right?
Mm-hmm.
You make an AI thing that I was like, okay, you tell it to make as many paperclips as possible,
Mm-hmm.
and it ends up enslaving the universe to make a giant paperclip machine, right? Okay. I see where my okay. That's the logical end of my thinking. Like, okay, yeah.
I just want to. What time are we at, Udesh?
Holy shit! It's an hour and 18 minutes. But yeah, so I think I should wrap this up because like usually it's like.
I think that the reason I ask is not because I want to end this conversation. I would love to talk for hours.
Yeah,
but I think there's movement in the hallway that
okay,
might be an entity that's waiting for my presence.
Okay, well, but do you want to check just in case?
Let me take it.
Yeah, go for it. Okay, cool. Okay, we'll wrap this up. Usually it's like hour and a half max before my brain stops working properly. But man, okay, this has been good.
I really enjoyed this conversation, Udesh.
Sure.
As I said, I would have loved to talk about
Yeah.
I don't know how many more topics, but
we'll do this again. But I think the information theory was a nice little wrapper to keep us like semi-constrained. It was nice to like talk about this stuff in that.
Yeah, I'm not sure it functioned as a constraint as much as it perhaps should
it
have, but it was a nice conversation.
But it's good. No, because this is the kind of things that I like to think about, and every time I have a conversation with you like this, I always think to myself, "Holy shit, we should record it."
There's one thing we haven't talked about yet, and I'm just gonna do a random guess about the identity of the student that we were.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Was this Gabby?
No, it was Serena.
Serena,
Yeah.
nice. I wouldn't have,
that was the one. Okay, definitely do this again. Next time, so many things that we touched on that we didn't really go down. Like we could have gone down so many tangents, but I think that was good. That like I just wanted to get to see if my intuitions about like sharing information and like what it means to be surprised were good and correct, and seems like they are right. So what do you think? All good?
I think it was a nice conversation, and I also think it's one that I would love to continue at some other point actually.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah,
we'll pick it up next time. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks so much, Udesh.
Yeah, for sure. See you later. This has been a One Deeper podcast. Thanks for joining, and I hope you learned something. Catch you again next time.